Yesterday is a day that Venezuelans will mourn, and will mourn forever. 16 people at least were killed during the demonstrations, and that is a big tragedy for the country. 16 people to be killed in one day is only, we can see in the world, only ISIS and President Maduro can provide that to the world. And that is the shame on the dictatorship on Venezuela. Plus, of course, we have seen the manipulation of the result. They are creating an alternative reality that cannot fool anybody. At least we have to say that we have seen all the centers of voting centers practically empty during the whole day. Some of them they closed even hours before it was the end of the election. So what we have seen is a completely fraud. And this fraud has not been recognized by the most important democracies in the world, and everybody has condemned the violence. And that was what this day means for Venezuelans.
At what point do you think that this situation, as you've noted, there have been 16 people killed yesterday, 125 at least killed since all this began. At what point does this threaten to seriously destabilize Venezuela?
Venezuela is completely stabilized, and the country has completely fallen into a economic, social, political, and financial crisis. The way ahead is to restore democracy in the country. We know what the people want. We know what the people think. And we know that the people will do whatever is necessary to achieve it. To restore the democracy today is the imperative of the international community about Venezuela, and is, of course, the need of the Venezuelan people.
Now, Nicolas Maduro, for his part, says that he's giving power to the little people in Venezuela and taking it away from what he calls the oligarchs. What do you make of statements like that?
That statement is not right from the beginning to the end. The Venezuelan people are suffering like they have never suffered before. We have seen this social crisis putting people to die because of lack of medicine, because of lack of food. The rate of children mortality is the highest ever. There have appeared diseases that were eradicated for decades. So what we are facing is an incredible humanitarian crisis that we will have to need to resolve in the future.
I know that you've been trying your hand at diplomacy over the past couple of months there in Venezuela. What power does the OAS now have to try and mitigate the situation somehow, to, as you say, return to democracy, but also to make sure that Venezuela itself gets back on track? Because it is a very dire humanitarian situation, as you've noted as well.
We have tools. The main tool to restore democracy in the country is applying the Inter-American Democratic Charter, and for that we need the support of the countries. We have been very loud about denouncing what is going on in Venezuela. We have taken away impunity from this dictatorship. We have been very clear in the way that we need to move forward in order that institutions should start working again, that the restoration of power to the different branches of government is achieved. That means we need to increase international pressure, and internal pressure also has to be increased. The ultimate form of international pressure are sanctions.
But when you say that, when you call for things to be restored, changes to be made in Venezuela, you know that President Maduro and some of the others in the government are saying that the OAS, and you particularly, are biased. What do you do in that situation? Do you still have any sort of leverage, any clout there on the ground? Can you actually still talk to this government of Nicolas Maduro, or are you talking at them right now without getting any sort of response?
Listen, the government of President Maduro has been passing messages to me practically every week. We have been doing our answers to them, but the answers are very clear because they are in all our charters and conventions and agreements that we have in the framework of the organization. The work ahead will have to be done also by all member states together. our capacity to denounce, our capacity to take impunity away, as I said, it is relevant. We have our capacity also to encourage sanctions against the Venezuelan dictators. And of course, at the end of the day, some of the sanctions will have to affect the regime as a whole. Because today, the money that they receive from their natural resources is not by any means going to the people. In fact, people are receiving nothing of this money, but they are just receiving more repression against them.
How important is America's role going to be this? Because obviously America is by far the most powerful country in that region. I want to read you a tweet that Nikki Haley, America's ambassador to the United Nations, sent out saying, quote, "Maduro's sham election is another step towards dictatorship. We won't accept an illegal government. The Venezuelan people and democracy will prevail." What can America do now? And a lot of people are talking of possible sanctions against Venezuela's oil sector.
First of all, the United States should stay attached to the principles of democracy and respect of human rights. The second thing is to take action, and that those actions that can be taken can be read as sanctions. These sanctions could be targeting, of course, the authorities of the regime, and also from where this regime is getting their revenues. And that should be the pattern of action that the United States should move ahead.
Obviously, sir, if there's instability in Venezuela, that's something that can also threaten stability in the entire region, because you do also have some disagreements in the OAS as well, with, for instance, countries like Bolivia siding with the Maduro government. How do you maintain stability now and sort of work as a united front?
It is very difficult to maintain stability when we have a regime with these characteristics that is completely disrespectful of the feeling of the people, that in fact is going on through a financial, economic and social crisis without any doubt and without any consideration to the people. Venezuela is already stabilized in the region. If we see, for example, 2 million Venezuelans have left the country in the last 3 years, and that have put a lot of migratory pressure on practically every country in the region, but especially those that they are small island, the Caribbean, or small countries in Central America, that this migratory pressure is really causing a lot of trouble. So, also, it's a threat to security because, as you see, for example, President Maduro's family is in jail in New York because of narco-traffic. The vice president has funds frozen in the United States for some $500 million because of narco-traffic.